It has now been 3 years since the world got its first look at Microsoft's vision for AI-powered work when it announced Microsoft 365 Copilot in March 2023. The last 3 years have had their ups and downs for users, as AI development generally, and Microsoft's product roadmap specifically, has been somewhat of a roller coaster. In this video, to celebrate those 3 years, I'm going to look at the 3 features available to Copilot users now in 2026 that best reflect the ambition Microsoft first showed us, and 3 that, in my opinion at least, need to be put at the top of the list for a course correction, as they're holding the whole product back in an increasingly competitive field. Keep watching to see which features I've picked. My name is Nick DeCourcy. I'm a Microsoft 365 consultant who specialises in AI adoption for small and medium-sized businesses. I'm also a Microsoft MVP for Microsoft 365 Copilot. If you're interested in keeping up with AI advancements, make sure you get subscribed to the channel and drop this video a like so you get to see more from me in the future. And if you're interested in working with me, check out the links down in the video description to get in contact. So let's start with the 3 features as they stand today that I think best reflect the ambition and vision Microsoft showed for Copilot back at its announcement and has continued to communicate since. You might have others or a different take, so please drop your comments along the way as you watch. Edit with Copilot. The core premise of Microsoft 365 Copilot is to leverage AI in the place knowledge workers store data and do work. Microsoft 365. Undoubtedly, the data integration of Copilot immediately set it apart from others like ChatGPT, for the really simple reason that OpenAI doesn't have an ecosystem with your business data. But the place where you would expect Microsoft to win most plainly, being able to get Copilot to work competently alongside you in its apps, has been somewhat of a mixed bag. From day one, Copilot was able to do things like build Word documents or create PowerPoint slide decks, but for a wide variety of reasons I've got into in other videos, the efficacy of these capabilities, while extremely useful, still lagged behind the product concept that was shown all the way back at the start of 2023. Complaints like new users opening an app and asking Copilot to do something and just being given a set of instructions rather than any actions has been a constant undercurrent of negativity around just how useful Copilot is. But it seems like this is an area where a new approach has started to retell this story. With the app-based agent mode feature that's been in preview the last few months, now rolling out as Edit with Copilot in Word, Excel and later PowerPoint, we now have a version of Copilot that is distinctly capable in making really effective use of the power of Microsoft's apps. This, in my view, is the in-app Copilot experience many users have been expecting since Copilot first launched. Like any feature, there is still room for improvement. I've yet to see how this concept works in the announced Outlook version, and so far there's no sign of equivalent agent modes in other places like OneNote. Yet as an approach to make Copilot a useful assistant where you're working, Edit with Copilot largely turns it from a tool that knows a lot to a tool that can do a lot too. Agent Builder. During the run-up to Microsoft 365 Copilot's original release, its extensibility capabilities became one of the most anticipated aspects of the platform. But as released in 2023, this confusing mix of plugins and flows and conversational components seemed indecipherable and unusable. It took a full year for Microsoft to course correct when at Ignite 2024 it outlined its agentic vision for Copilot and made building and deploying agents the core path for delivering extensibility. This was just as all the major providers got started with agents. Practically overnight, the concept of extending Copilot to be the tool you need for your specific process or task went from too complex to understand to something a non-technical person could do for simple use cases in an hour. I've spoken here before about some executive coaching sessions where I've helped senior leaders learn how to build an agent in a single session. At the core of this simplicity is Agent Builder, also briefly known as Copilot Studio Lite, an agent building experience rooted in Microsoft 365 Copilot Chat that has been growing in capability steadily over the last few years. Foundationally, any user can build a custom Copilot experience contextualized around the way they do their process and grounded in real live business data from Microsoft 365 by doing nothing other than writing what they need in natural language and clicking a few buttons in the UI. This continues to be part of a wider extensibility framework that allows you to tackle more complex challenges, connect to more data sources, and layers on more enterprise-grade control for broad deployment of created resources. But as a starting point, Agent Builder is the strongest reflection today of the initial vision of Copilot being a tool that would bend to each individual's needs and preferences for work. And if you're an executive with a preference for learning how to build an agent in an hour, consider signing up for one of those coaching sessions. The details are down below. Facilitator Agent. The importance of Copilot as a helper for Teams meeting overload was a key part of Microsoft's initial reveal of the product, but it wasn't until late 2024 going into early 2025 that we saw the Copilot Teams feature I think best shows off this potential. Facilitator Agent. Facilitator goes beyond just providing a question and answer service for Teams meeting data or delivering a useful post-meeting summary. It was the first in a new class of Copilot agentic experiences that would truly work alongside you to help you to get work done, both proactively and reactively, in the context of what is going on in the moment. From helping keep meetings on topic to creating co-editable notes and keeping track of action items, Facilitator is a small window through which we can possibly see the Copilot that many of us want to have everywhere across the ecosystem. Facilitator has probably become the Copilot feature I use most often, as I just default to having it turned on in every Teams meeting, as its help is just so useful. I also recommend the same in my Copilot training courses, as in my view there is simply no downside to this feature for a meeting where you would presumably be capturing notes anyway and tracking the actions. For Copilot to be as successful in the long term as Microsoft Office, and now Microsoft 365, has been over the last 30 plus years, then more of the vision shown off back in 2023 needs to move into easy to default experiences like this. In the same way that Word just opens when you click on a document, Copilot just opens when we click on a meeting without anyone thinking about it. But not everything in my view is as rosy as these three capabilities. There are other features that in my opinion are acting as an anchor for Microsoft 365 Copilot, stopping it either from a purely technical perspective or in the perception of users from reaching where it needs to be. These are those three. Work IQ. The biggest factor that separates Microsoft from competitors like OpenAI or Anthropic is that Microsoft has a whole productivity ecosystem that also houses a good portion of the business-specific data that exists. If context is the flavour enhancer that turns AI output from bland generalities into flavourful specific business insights, then Microsoft owns the biggest store stocking those ingredients. And this recognition was key to the initial positioning of Copilot as connected to your data through the semantic index. In fact, a large part of the first year of Copilot was almost entirely focused on how to get that business data ready to make Copilot as useful as possible. This platform of Microsoft's graph data layer, the semantic index, powering experience like context IQ, and now driving a new framing, work IQ, is a really important factor in what makes Copilot effective. Arguably, even with both ChatGPT and Claude building capabilities to connect into these data assets, Microsoft still has the edge. But Microsoft's failure to turn this data advantage, semantic index, and now work IQ from a marketing message into a well-understood technical platform that people like me can get really specific on the pros and cons of is, in my view, a big failure. Yesterday, for example, I was reading a long post on LinkedIn from someone in the business AI space who was bashing Copilot as a product. Many of his points were focused on data access and the specifics of how data gets surfaced as part of a request. Most of what he was saying was wrong. It was either outdated or just inaccurate, but I had nothing to formally discount the experience he was sharing, other than my own use of the product that had obviously ended up with different results. As I'm sure most of you know, the I think this, yes, but I think that frame of discussion on any social media platform doesn't get anywhere fast. The takeaway Microsoft wants us to have about Work IQ is it allows Copilot to reason over all of our data. It's Not that it doesn't work, it very much does, but this all your data framing that is most people's casual takeaway is not specifically true. There's lots of data within Microsoft 365, whether it be particular types of metadata that exists in SharePoint or specific app types, that it still doesn't really see. It clearly has limits based on search infrastructure and context size. There are clearly signals it uses based on how you use Microsoft 365 or your organisation setup to decide what resources to include. I continue all this because I've used Copilot enough to see it be true, but I still can't tell you exactly how it works or what it sees or doesn't, what signals it prioritises or what search limits it has, as Microsoft does not tell us. WorkIQ is a black box and has practically no public documentation. Much of the trust that exists around Microsoft's products is driven by a community built on deep technical understanding and specific technical discourse. The lack of specificity around WorkIQ has meant it lands as a footnote in any conversations outside of Microsoft's marketing hype cycle. However, just recently, that may have been changing. In a recent Microsoft blog post, Seth Patton started to lay out more detail about how WorkIQ works. It still didn't go into the nitty-gritty to the extent I would like to see with fully Microsoft Learn-based technical documentation, but it is perhaps an indication of acknowledgement that such a key capability only being understood as a marketing talking point undercuts one of Microsoft's biggest AI age advantages. Where is Loop? Just when Copilot was arriving, it seemed like Microsoft was poised to make another significant change that would also redefine the future of Microsoft 365, the arrival of Loop. Those who keep up with my channel will know that the videos I've made about Loop in the past have not always been so positive, so it may seem strange for this to be part of my list. But while I may have not been the biggest fan of the execution of Loop, I am a very big fan of the idea behind it. Loop seems perfect for the AI age. Instead of fixed document and file types, you work on a canvas where conceptually any type of asset can fit anywhere, and the components of those canvases can be broken down, shared, and worked on independently, with everything tying back to the whole. For data systems that rely strongly on semantic understanding, the signals you could get from this type of workflow seem radically different from traditional Microsoft 365 apps. Loop appeared, components proliferated, the app itself got a lot of Microsoft 365 Copilot integration, and Loop assets themselves even became core to how Copilot works. A Copilot page is just a Loop page, and an agent like Facilitator delivers its co-editing goodness via Loop. But that's where things stalled. As of today, Copilot pages are mainly just about keeping hold of Copilot outputs to share with others, and Copilot integration has been all but removed from the Loop app itself, awaiting some future update. There is no signal I'm aware of for edit with Copilot's type functionality to make its way to Loop, or to be integrated into Copilot pages via Copilot chat. I think 3 years in, a real opportunity around this technology continues to be missed. It was not in itself core to that initial Copilot vision, but a lot of the deep integration that was initially shown was clearly dependent on Loop technology. Instead of building that, it almost appears as if Microsoft has moved on. And if that's the case, potentially so too has the opportunity to move forward from those legacy Microsoft 365 apps at some point in the future. As tools like ChatGPT and Claude get more capabilities when it comes to users interacting with their outputs, increasingly those solutions look a lot like Loop and feel like the right approach. Microsoft was grasping this future before either Claude or ChatGPT arrived, but it may be letting it go at an inopportune time. This is an area where, for the good of Microsoft 365 Copilot and Microsoft 365 generally, I hope there is more clarity in the not too distant future. Microsoft 365 Copilot app. Look, I'm just going to say it. I miss the old Office portal at office.com. But beyond that, it's my view that for many users, the new Copilot-focused experience puts Copilot in their face in exactly the wrong way. This is a portal that over the last few years has undergone radical redesign multiple times, and smaller redesigns seemingly weekly, and is where new features arrive, get shifted around, and almost feels like a lab for researching how users choose to use AI, rather than a place where hundreds of millions of knowledge workers are supposed to start their day. Personally, I've come to find utility in the Microsoft 365 Copilot app because it's the home of Copilot Chat, but I also recognise that for a broader ecosystem provider where the most vital thread for customer alignment is consistency, the constant change cycle in this prominent spot shows off the worst of Microsoft's AI-based keeping up with the Joneses, and also the biggest negative impact of moving from locally installed software to SaaS. A big part of the value of the Copilot vision is the trust you can put in Microsoft, and for me the Microsoft 365 Copilot app underscores a key tension between the pace of development we are seeing in the AI age and the stability a provider like Microsoft must optimise for to a very different degree than newer players. Across a lot of the suite, I think Microsoft navigates this tension well, and it is clear that even if features arrive slower, that long-term stability is front of mind. But in that Copilot portal experience, too often things land the other side of that issue, and people like me are left scrambling to support adoption, or even just to explain what the heck is going on. A product with the breadth and depth of Microsoft 365 Copilot is never going to hit right on every capability for every user, but over the last 3 years, and I have to say particularly over the last 18 months, the likelihood that someone wants to have a positive versus critical conversation about being a Copilot user has increased a huge amount. This is a product that has moved in the right direction in a sea of complex one-upmanship from competitors, neither with the inertia or platform risk that Microsoft has. Yet the product teams at Microsoft have largely kept moving in a positive direction, and one that has been explained more coherently than perhaps it was early on. There are still some big issues I would like to see fixed, and it would be great if before we come back to this for the 4th anniversary of the announcement, everything promised in those early days raises its head. But with new initiatives coming like Copilot Co-work and the shift away from relying solely on OpenAI models, we are potentially moving into the most exciting phase of Copilot development yet. Would all these aspects make your lists? What did I miss? Start the conversation down in the comments. And as always, if you need help with further understanding these issues or working out an adoption approach for your organisation, please do reach out. Thanks for watching through to the end. Until the next video, bye bye.